Hi, my name is Obanor. Many of you guys may know me from Too Hot to Handle and the most recent series, Perfect Match. So today I actually want to come and clear the air on a lot of things that were portrayed on the show that wasn't really the closest to the truth. I was upset knowing that there was a pact to not let people in. When I was in the hotel, there was 2 times that I literally got dressed to go on a date, because like if you're in the boardroom, you go and you get dressed, like you get ready. So I did my hair, had my outfit on, I was just waiting. And then 2 times I was told, no, like, you didn't make it, you're not in the house. And I was so hurt and I was so upset. And like a week prior to that was my Too Hot to Handle promo. So Too Hot to Handle had just came out. I was a bit upset because I knew how my experience was on Too Hot to Handle. I felt like because people were making these packs, I was robbed of the opportunity to go in and just fully be able to find somebody. Because I was like, okay, like you have me coming in as a bombshell, which is already bad on its own, because it's like, okay, I know I'm in a position to steal somebody's man. I do have to break a relationship. If I succeed, then what? Like, will I have the opportunity to find somebody in the limited amount of days that are left? So out of the 22 people that were casted, I literally only knew Elise, and then prior to that, I had met Nigel maybe 2 to 3 weeks before. When Brittany was in the house, Kaz actually told her that he was gonna match with her, and he told her that he wanted to tell Micah they were gonna match. Then he goes to Micah and ends up matching with her instead of Britton, when he just said that he was gonna match with Britton. So with Holly, he even went as far as to tell her that he felt like he had a stronger connection with her than he had with Micah, and that Micah wasn't compatible like with his personality. And then says that he was hearing from everybody that Micah was like interested in someone else, and so he wanted to be done with her. Like he wanted to end it. He didn't want to be with Micah. Yeah, so both of them were completely blindsided because he's literally telling them one thing, then turning around and doing the other. And honestly, they painted him to be like so much better than he was. I was aware that like, okay, like a guy named Kaz would lead you on and say that he's gonna pick you, he's gonna choose you, and talk down on Micah, but then turn around and go back to Micah. So I was aware, like very well aware of that. And so my first interaction with Kaz was actually when I was like standing in like this like little circle with Dom, Britton, and him, and he's basically going on and talking about how he'd been arguing with Micah. And obviously this is my opportunity where it's like, okay, like this is exactly how I can get in where I fit in, so I could finally get into the house. And even when I asked him if he found his perfect match, like he didn't even say yes. For me, I was like, okay, like this is something that I could attempt to try to get into the house. He's the one that started like the whole conversation that turned like sexual or whatever. Like me saying I do Pilates and you're saying like, can you put your legs behind your head? I didn't start that. Originally, I didn't even want to like be on that type of sexual kind of vibe, because you know that was like, okay, my Too Hot to Handle kind of version. But I was just like, I didn't want that to be like who I was portrayed as on Perfect Match. But the conversation started and I was just like, let me just play my role. So just throughout the whole night, I was talking to him. Like we were talking for hours the entire time there. Throughout the night, he'd continue to tell me how much he loves my eye contact, how much chemistry we have, you know, so on and so forth. The same stuff that he was telling the other girls. Honestly, I did feel like I was robbed of my experience in the house. I had to score. And I'm not even like the type of person that could just like fake being attracted to someone. I did find him attractive. Like I'd be lying if I said I didn't. But I knew about his F-boy tendencies, so I knew that this wasn't something I was going to be like, oh, like, that's my perfect match. Our conversation actually ended with Kaz telling me that he didn't want to kiss me, but he first wanted to tell Micah what's up. Same way that he was supposed to tell Micah what's up with the whole Britton situation. Which is why the next day, when the whole mixer was there, when Nick Lachey asked me, like, how does it feel to be in the house? And that's why I said, oh, like, I just want to see if Kaz talked to Micah. So glad that the clip of Harry came out with the whole Melinda situation, because how bad Harry and people were trying to gaslight Melinda that never happened, that she was a liar, is the same way that all the guys in the house gaslit the girls from like outside the house because they messed up during that cenote. So I want to say the only person that actually was well behaved was Justin. Literally Chris obviously felt like he didn't get the full experience because he was with Tolu, and then goes and is hitting on both Xanthi and Britton, tells Xanthi that she's like definitely his type, and then is trying to get at Britton for like a long time. They had like a long conversation. Then he continues to go on and tell Dom that Tolu is not his physical type. That boy is a faker, and one thing that I do not play about is people using black women, especially dark-skinned women, for screen time. It's disgusting. You think it makes you look better? No, it makes you look worse because people can see right through your BS. It's funny how like Steven looked like he did absolutely nothing. Even in like one of the scenes, like briefly, you see that when Xanthi is talking to Harry, like Steven is touching Xanthi's hips. Like they were obviously having conversations. He was like tapping for her to come sit next to him. He also was trying to get at Britton and telling her that like she's exactly his type. I can't remember what food it was. I want to say it was hummus, but he sucked something off Melinda's toes and then took a body shot off of Dom. When it was time for the mixer and all of the girls were at the table, it never was supposed to come off nasty. It was supposed to come off as like us as girls were supposed to tell the other girls in the house what kind of went down with the guys. And obviously like people said some things, but it quickly escalated with the whole Jess and Melinda situation. I actually didn't get a chance to say anything about Kaz to Micah. So later I literally had a conversation with Micah about my conversations with Kaz, and they literally didn't even show it. Making me look like, oh, you didn't even talk. Like, come on now. So when it goes into like the kitchen scene, prior to that, what they didn't show is literally I'm talking to Elise because she's the only girl that I know. And so next thing you know, I guess Kaz had just gotten to an argument with Micah, which I later found in that argument, this man stood up and yelled over her. So she's sitting down and he's standing up over her yelling. Like that is giving very aggressive, but he was obviously very upset about that argument. So he like barred in the kitchen, was like going off about like the whole situation with him and Micah's argument to Elise, and I'm sitting right there. So there's been multiple points where he's expressed to multiple women that him and Micah were not stable. They were always arguing. Every girl knew that they were always arguing. There was always something in their relationship. And obviously at that moment, I'm like, okay, they're not secure. So I need to secure my place. That's when I asked him the whole like, you know, number one thing. Also, the episode kind of came off as if like I was sitting around waiting for Kaz and that I didn't like try to get to know anybody else. So originally we were under the impression that anybody can match with anybody. So even if you were out the house, you could match with people that were outside the house. And I remember I've had conversations with Dom because Harry literally called me over and said, come talk to Dom. So I had a conversation with Dom.
If you were here, I would have been like, okay. That makes this house a little interesting.
Oh, would it?
Yeah.
I can get on with multiple people.
I had a conversation with Brighton, but it literally ended in like 0.2 seconds. I could just tell that he wasn't like my type. Elise came in and she like pulled him for a chat. Also, I talked to Nigel, and obviously I told you guys earlier that like I had met Nigel like 2 to 3 weeks prior to that. It's kind of left on some unfinished business type of thing. Like I was telling Elise how attracted I was to him out there, but I never like pursued it. And I know it's like, oh, Christine, you didn't pursue it. This TV version of me is not always how I am in real life. Me and Nigel had great conversations. We actually kissed twice. Linda had asked Nigel, like, who do you want to match up with? And he pointed at me, and then he like started kissing my thigh. So there was obviously a lot of something between Nigel and I, but we both weren't in the house. So we ended up making an agreement that one of us had to get in the house in order to bring the other person in. The likeliness of that was complex, like in the terms of like you'd have to win a competition in order to be able to have control over the boardroom, you know, one step at a time. I was very much aware that Kaz was an F-boy, that he's a manipulator, that he's a gaslighter. I knew that he wasn't my perfect match or somebody that I would ever spend my life with or any time with and take serious. Like I knew that that was not the case, but he was the only person that I would have been able to kind of use, which I know it sounds bad, to get in the house, but that's just what it is. Like I was robbed of my opportunity and my experience, and I did want to get into the house so I could bring Nigel in. So before Kaz and I actually matched up, it was kind of funny because it didn't show the little argument that we had, because, you know, we were talking about like the whole game, like how he kissed Holly. And then he had brought up the whole me kissing Nigel situation, and he was upset saying like, you kissed Nigel. And I was like, you know, playing my part. And I was like, yeah, you weren't in the game. And then he goes on and says, well, Dom called Britton to come for the kiss because it was her turn to kiss somebody. So she called Britton, like, you could have did that, like, no. And then at that moment, I was like, damn, like, maybe I messed up because he sees that, you know, I had kissed Nigel. And so, yeah, I really wasn't certain that I was going to end up going in the house. But then he ended up saying, like, do you want to match? And so then I was just, like, completely caught off guard. And so then obviously, you know, I said yes. And then he instantly regrets it, right? So he goes and, okay, keep in mind, I told you that some of us still were in, like, under the impression that you could match with whoever. So Dom and Britton they were making out because they had just matched, or they thought they matched. While they're in the middle of making out, he literally goes to Britton and asks her to match after he just matched with me. So obviously it was like, you know, like, you can't do that. You just asked to match. But then my boy was very upset about it. So then it was like, okay, it's possible. But then Britton said no. That was how me and Kaz matched. And obviously I'm not stupid. I'm not born yesterday. Like, I know what it is. I knew I wasn't Kaz type, but I was just really, really, really happy that I finally made it in the house and that I could just have a little bit of an experience. Also, I want to clear the air on like how they made the edit come off as if I slept with him. So how they had like Micah matched with Izzy, which I'm just gonna say that made no sense. If there's people saying that they weren't hungry for screen time, but you stay in the house, when you say like, ugh, I don't want to have to wake up and see Christine with Kaz, but you put yourself in a position to wake up and see Christine and Kaz, it's like, Jess left, Harry left, when the Izzy and Tolu thing didn't work out, Izzy left, like, Justin left, but you stayed. And then the remark of her saying, like, I know they're hooking up, and then it goes into me making out with him. I don't like that. We did not hook up, and I know it comes off as that based on the editing, but I just want to clear that because I'm not that type of person, and I know that based on like how my edits have been on TV, like my past show and just even this show in general, y'all would think that that's the type of girl I am. Absolutely not. I did not know that boy Kaz. The next day was my first challenge. The goal was for me to win, go in the boardroom, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, Nigel would have been on there and set myself on a date with him. But obviously we didn't win that challenge, and Tolu won, which made me feel a lot better because the next morning, me and her were in the restroom and we were talking, and you know, we were discussing, you know, the chemistry that Nigel and I had. We both agreed that like if Nigel's on there, that she's gonna set me on a date. My girl came through and that's exactly what she did. Shout out to Tolu. I was very excited to go on that date with Nigel, but this is where I messed up. This is where I went wrong, and this is where I'll admit that my pride and my ego came in the way, because this is the moment where I tried to be strategic and it blew up in my face. Y'all know Kaz likes his ego stroked. He loves his ego stroked, and it affects his ego when another man's in a picture. And so obviously he knew about Nigel, and he knew there was like a little bit of chemistry between Nigel and I. Strategy wise, I was on some, okay, I know he's an F-boy, I know he's a gaslighter, I know he's a manipulator. And what made me so furious, like when you see the swing scene and I'm so upset, I wanted to blindside him the same way that he blindsided Holly, Britton, and Micah. I wanted to pull a him on some savage shit, and it blew up in my face. He ended up going back to Micah. I did not think that after everything that went down and how upset she was at him with how he had continued to treat her, that she would take him back. I actually asked her to match while I was on my date with Nigel. At that moment, I was livid. So that conversation came off a lot more light than what it really was because I cussed a lot, so obviously they did have to cut a lot of the stuff that I said. The thing that makes me upset is it looks like I walked off on that conversation saying, oh, that's stupid, towards him saying like, we're not compatible. I walked off and said that's stupid because this man goes, we're not compatible because you want a big house and I don't. That was literally the dumbest thing that I've ever heard. So that's why I got up and I walked away, and I was just like so annoyed because at that moment I knew it's gonna make me look like a terrible person. And I was upset about the fact that like I didn't want it to come off that, oh, like I was so unsure about Nigel. My biggest fear was making it come off as if Nigel was my second option when that was never the case. Strategy is just not for me. Other people who are being strategic as well are like 10 steps ahead of me. So that was a lesson learned for me. The next day was another challenge, and it was gonna be my first challenge with Nigel. And at that moment, I honestly was nervous because I didn't know what Nigel's red flags were. So I didn't get a chance to learn any of that. Why did we win that challenge? There was these chains and it had like red flags on it. And so we had to pull them out, and there was like a whole bunch of red flags, and you had to put on like the little board what your top 10 red flags were. And the only thing that we missed was one red flag. And at that moment is when I really realized, like, dang, like me and Nigel really do see eye to eye. That challenge really made me realize, like, wow, like we really are compatible. We have the same views on things. That challenge was cut out. Because we won that challenge, we got a date. And so that paint date was actually the date that we got because of the challenge. The next day was the final dates. We had this date where it was like this like platform that was like in the water, and so we were walking up, and there was like this traditional dancer, and he was like blowing this horn and doing this performance, and then he was like luring us into like the table to sit down, and then we had like a whole bunch of people performing for us. Oh, it was such a vibe. It was beautiful, and the water was so blue. Oh no, it was beautiful, but they cut that date out too. So the day after the final dates was the finale. But like I said previously, like I didn't know nobody, so the only people that I really knew from prior was Elise. So I was like, oh yeah, like nobody's gonna vote for me. I was okay with that because I was actually happy that I had like this connection with Nigel. I'm gonna go down to each couple and break down why they weren't a perfect match. The girls were the ones who truly and genuinely had feelings for the guys, but the guys were all playing a game. Tolu and Chris, I already told you he was faking the funk. Lots of little stuff that he said that gave off that he wasn't interested in Tolu. Even to the point where when he goes back home, he's a kiki king with people telling them how he faked it with Tolu, and obviously that got back to me, so I snitched. That was disgusting, and it actually pissed me off because you're not gonna do that. Like I've said it before, you're not gonna do that. You're not going to use a black woman for clout. Months later, like 9 months later, he literally sees Tolu for the first time in LA because Tolu came out here, and I was with her at the Circle event, and he basically asked her, so like what are we gonna do, like they hadn't spoken, so like what are we gonna do about the show, basically insinuating like how are we gonna fake the funk. She looking at him like he's a user, he's a clout chaser, anything that comes out of his mouth, so your little 15 minutes of fame that you're thinking that you're having, it's 16 minutes and your time is up. He also got lucky that his apology to the LGBTQ community during the finale didn't make the cut. Mom got the tea on that side. One thing that I actually liked that still made the cut was Kaz coming unprovoked for Nigel and saying that Christine says she likes alpha men, but Nigel's not an alpha, just unprovoked. That, I just feel like that line itself tells a lot about how his mindset was throughout the show, how jealous he is, how he wants all these women to stroke his ego and only be for him. That's literally why I called him out the way that I called him out. And obviously the way that it can come off is as if I was bitter, but that was not the case. The highlight of my night, y'all, when this man, like that man is an actor, like saying the L word by accident, he goes, and that look, and that look, and everybody, ooh. If you let her, why less than 24 hours after the camera stopped filming while we were at the hotel, like at the bar, all drinking and partying, did you kiss you know who? But you let Micah. Yeah. Why'd you do that? If you let her. I do feel like comparatively, Alara and Stebbin were better than any of the other couples. Like they were better. Like I do agree with that. However, I do feel like it was more like a lustful relationship. Like she was all in. You could tell that she really liked him. Like something was off about him. Everything was obviously for show, like I said. He literally couldn't even fake the funk 1 week after we stopped filming because he ghosted her. At like the recent summer break event that we went to, he literally told Britton that he wished that he matched up with her instead. Like, these men are literally full of shit. Brighton and Elise, Brighton. That's the explanation. That's kind of like a breakdown on like the whole compatibility of everything and like why Nigel and I had won, because people were seeing things that weren't really portrayed on the show. The crazy thing about all of it is the fact that amongst all of them, that it was Harry and Jess that lasted longer than any of them. These boys couldn't even try for a week. Like, they were that bad. So now onto the topic of like people coming at me for not being a girl's girl. And honestly, y'all were saying that since Too Hot to Handle. It's like, whatever. Anybody that knows me in real life knows that I hold it down for my girls. When it comes to going on a dating show, there is no loyalty, especially if I don't know you. There's no loyalty to nothing. Like, it's a dating show. I came in as a bombshell. I'm gonna do what I need to do as a bombshell. And just the funny thing is, like, me not being portrayed as this girl's girl, when I just feel like some people were really good actors or making themselves look a lot better on TV. So example, Micah is a mean girl. I already in that house felt like I didn't belong. Everybody was very cliquey. I just felt like in the house in general, everybody was very cliquey. I'll just name a time where, you know, there's multiple times where we're in a van. She goes, oh my gosh, you guys, I'm sitting right here. Oh my gosh, you guys, can you believe we've all made it here since the beginning? I can't believe it. Knowing that I literally came dead last. And it was just like, and then obviously at that moment, Alara was like, oh, I haven't been here since the beginning. And then everybody would be like, oh, well, it feels like you've been. You might as well say you've been, like, stuff like that. But purposely, that conversation kept being emphasized. It kept being said. It's so mean. And I would just sit there and be like, okay. And then another thing that was said that was just like, why would you say that? She was asking, like, who do you think is going to win? Like, who do you think is going to win? Like, everybody's like, you know, talking and seeing like, who do you think is going to win? This girl starts laughing and she goes, imagine if Christine and Nigel win in my face while I'm sitting right there. And I'm just like, girl. And then I wanted to say the absolute best for last, Alara. You know, I actually genuinely liked Alara while we were filming. People were noticing that there was something off about her, but I don't know. I just felt like she was bubbly and she had like nice energy. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, but she crossed the line when she DM'd Nigel. So there was a point where, you know, nobody was really following each other. We weren't allowed to follow each other. It was March and we stopped filming in September and me and Nigel were still going. Like, we were on and off, but we were still going. We talked on the phone with each other every single day. We were working on our relationship. She'd always check in and be like, oh my gosh, babe, like, how are you? And Nigel, da da da. And she'd be like, oh, y'all are so cute. It's gonna work out. But then she slides in his DMs. And so she sends him one of his reels and like puts laughing faces. And it's like, you don't follow him, so you went out your way to go on his page to shoot. He just responded with like a laughing face, but he showed me, and I was just like, that's so weird. Like, she's so weird for that. Like, what was your motive behind that? You wanted to key into his DMs, like you didn't key your way into Harry Jowsey's house while you're friends with Jess when you came out to LA the beginning of the year. Why would you stay at Harry Jowsey's house? Yeah, you're not a girl's girl. You're actually very sloppy. And then on top of that, they had a whole group of them that stayed in Mexico. And so Harry was there with Jess. What does Alara do? Alara tries to hook up one of the other girls with Harry. Why'd you do that? You're friends with Jess. I can't be fake if I tried. So I was being like real distant to her when the summer break event happened. And she came up to me and she was saying like she noticed I was being weird, I was being distant. And that's when I told her that I didn't appreciate how she slid in Nigel's DMs. That was weird to me. Like, that was really slimy. And then she goes on and said like, no, like it wasn't like that. Like, I'm a girl's girl. Obviously, when everybody got together, like they had like took pictures or whatever with like Micah, like the other cast, cool, whatever. But why is the last message that you're asking Nigel, where are you staying? What were you gonna do with that information? If he said it was out here in LA, what were you gonna do with that information? Nigel and I had got into a huge argument and we ended things the day before the Netflix summer break event. So like about a month ago. So that's why like everything from that point after, me and Nigel weren't talking. We got into a very, very heated argument and we ended it. She thought she could, girl, wrong bitch. In conclusion, with everything that's being said, I would say that the vote was correct and that Nigel and I were the most compatible and the closest to the perfect match, for the simple fact that we actually did try. We tried for 9 months, and it wasn't until a month ago that we literally separated. And one thing that actually does kind of like annoy me, I told you guys we got in an argument, the worst argument that we've ever gotten into, and like less than 24 hours we had to do a podcast together on the Where Are We Now, like, you know, like a podcast on the winning couple, because we're still together. I feel like at that moment I was so angry. We were so petty towards each other in that podcast. I don't know what he said in his Where Are We Now. I was very petty. Everything was based on emotions. It invalidated our journey and the 9 months that we did spend together. I just don't like how I allowed my anger to dismiss everything that we did have and make it just seem like that's all that it was, when it actually was a very beautiful and deep and meaningful relationship that we've had. It literally had, for Valentine's Day, I made him like this little love letter box, and it was created out of the stuff from the painting date. If you can see, I have it hung on my wall. I even have it hung in my living room. As of right now, we're not together anymore, but I don't want to say the door is fully closed. Those were real, genuine feelings. As of right now, we need to focus on healing and becoming the better versions of ourselves through therapy, self-reflection, and then just see like what happens from there. And it was the recognition that we weren't fully healed. Jumping into what we had, obviously we got swept away with our emotions, not really knowing that we were gonna go into this experience and find somebody. I'll keep praying on our relationship and allow God to take things in his own hands. Only time will tell with that. Let me know if you guys have any more questions. And at the end of all of this, if your opinion is still, you stand 10 toes down on it, so be it. It's okay. Like, I'm just happy that I'm able to get my truth out, my experience out. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love you guys so, so much. Till next time.